What is up, guys? It is the OTO podcast, back with episode 8 with my co host, Bannon Crowley. He can introduce himself right now.
Yep, that's my name. You know how to say it. I'm very excited to be back.
That's his name. Do not wear it out. And obviously, last weekend's events of UFC 314, we had Volk getting the belt back. We had Patty versus Chandler. We had a ton of fun fights. We're going to go over them all, go over future picks, past picks. So keep in tune for everything ahead. But we will start off with the main event, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. It was a super fun fight. Volk got his belt back, obviously, by decision. He's having a little second prime, a second peak right now. So, how did you think the fight went, and what does this mean for the future?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before. We both obviously love Diego Lopez. He was a guy that a year or 2 years ago almost we said would be next up. He won the Next Man Up award and, you know, unranked a year and a half ago to come to a championship fight is crazy. He went out there and had a great performance. He just ran into arguably the greatest featherweight of all time. We can talk about that a little bit later. At least now, I think people are more comfortable saying that, maybe than they were before. But either way, I mean, Lopez rocked him at one point towards the end of the second round. That was very scary if you were rooting for Volk there because, as we know, those past few fights. But the main thing that I want to point out is that I think Lopez looked like he was ready for the moment. He just wasn't the better fighter on that night. So I wouldn't take away this performance and say that Diego Lopez isn't a title contender. I think he proved that he is. Depending on some of the cards, it was 4-1, 4-1, 3-2. That second round being the only one that was the difference because of that knockdown. Um, but either way, I mean, he didn't get knocked out. He went 5 rounds. He won at least one of them, depending on who you ask. And Volk is champion once again. We can match make a little bit after. I just want to hear how your thoughts on the fight, but I would say that after this, we have a very clear picture of what's next in this division because we had so many fights within this division on this card and also what was said before this card as well. But before we get into that, I'll tell you who I have for each guy. I'm sure you probably agree. I think it's pretty unanimous picks on both sides, but I want to know what you think of this fight.
Yeah, so for the most part, it kind of went exactly as I predicted. Diego Lopez did do better than I thought. As you mentioned, we're both big fans of his. He's had a crazy rise to the top of the division in such a short amount of time. I remember a little over a year ago, this time last year, I picked Pat Sabatini to beat Diego Lopez, which is looking at that now, the levels are crazy and completely different. But if I do remember, you did have him over Volk, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yep. And it was going to be close either way, but Volk. I mean, I've seen a lot of criticism online from Volk running away, blah blah blah. That's completely irrelevant to me. Volk is doing whatever he has to do to become champ. I mean, I don't know. MMA is like there's never happy endings. Like pretty much every guy gets finished off the worst way possible, and it never gets better. But it's
Mhm.
always a solid decline. There's never like a solid ramp up, and that's the first time I can remember someone who looked that bad and now got a belt back. It's an incredible story. It was super fun to watch. But Volk looked great footwork wise. His striking, his technique, and his skill is still incredible. His chin is very scary to me though. I do wonder with that. Ilya obviously has power. We all know that. We saw what he did to Max. Islam is obviously that good. So you can't take it all away from Volk. In between, he dominated Yair, and now he beat Lopez 4-1 in my mind. But Volk, when he got dropped, I mean, there was a few times throughout that fight. I don't know if you saw that slow-mo exchange where both of them hit each other and they both got hit
Mhm.
back. Volk got the harder hit there, and his face after the fight was beat up very bad. And I don't know what the future is for Volk, where he looked incredible in that fight. Lopez, obviously, at least in my mind, had very obvious weaknesses that everyone, including him, knows about. His cardio, his stamina, keeping up his technique. It gets a little raw and wild when he loses it, which is very fun to watch. But someone who is tactical and skilled like Volk can exploit that, which he did. So Volk looked great, but in the future for Volk, I don't know what's next. I mean, matchmaking alone. I wouldn't want him to retire and vacate it, but I'm just about there. I don't think he's washed yet, but I guess before we get into matchmaking for Volk and then maybe Lopez after. I think Volk's very lucky with the top of this featherweight division. I was just checking the rankings before. Max Holloway's number one. That's obviously not real. Ilya is number three, I believe. Also not a featherweight anymore. So uh, we'll see. I guess I'll start now and then I'll pass it on to you. But my mind, it's an easy pick. People don't love him, but Movsar Evlaev, I think, is the guy, the only guy that deserves the contending shot right now. I'm not exactly mad about that, but I don't. He did dominate Aljo. He beat Lopez. He's undefeated, but I don't love the way he fights. Doesn't get finishes. Kind of reminds me of like that Makayev type of guy where he wins, but the UFC just doesn't love that. So I love that Volk's he wants to be active and fight again. So in my mind, International Fight Week, you give him Evlaev. If Volk loses, I like to say it maybe it's retirement time. But if Evlaev doesn't really have that finishing threat, he's not going to crack that shin from Volk. It's really going to be a test of Volk's true skill against a great grappler like that. So I think it'd be a super fun fight for International Fight Week, and I think it's a fight that Volk could win.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's pretty clearly Mavzar in this situation. Before this fight a few months ago, Volkanovski said if he wins, he wants to fight Mavzar for the belt. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to put that together as well. Like you said, the top three guys really aren't going to be contenders because you're not going to fight Max, you're not going to fight Ilya, you're not going to have an immediate rematch against Diego. We can talk about Yair Rodriguez after, but before this fight, he was on a losing streak. This was his first win in a while. His first win since Josh Emmett in 2023. So that doesn't warrant you a title opportunity after beating a debuting pit bull who kind of just stood there for most of the time. We can talk about that a little bit later as well. But we can't forget that he got finished by Brian Ortega in February of 2024 and then lost to Volk in the fight before that and got knocked out in the third round. So he doesn't deserve it. Mavzar, like we said, he's had some really good close fights. I honestly thought at the time Aljo may have beat him. I haven't really gone back and watched it, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's the one who deserves it. Is it the most exciting fight that we're ever going to see in this division? Not necessarily, but it's a fight that has to happen. Volk said he wants to fight two more times, defend the belt two more times this year. So I think he fights against Mavzar, and then segueing it as well, I think he fights against the winner of Diego and Yair Rodriguez. That's the other fight that is going to be made. We saw the beef before this. It makes the most sense. Yair versus Diego Lopez for a number one contender fight. They're essentially outside of Mavzar, the other top three guys, because obviously we have to remove Max and we have to remove Ilya, so that would move everyone up basically. So those are the top three guys right now. Yair coming off of a win, he's tied for fourth right now. It makes sense for him to fight Diego. Not international fight week. Sorry, UFC Mexico card. You can put Pantoja versus Royval on that if you want, and have this be the co-main event, 5 rounds between Yair and Diego Lopez. Unless you have a different fight in mind for Lopez, I think that is probably the fight that should happen.
Yeah, that's 100% the obvious choice. I had the same thing. The press conference before the fight was hilarious with them beefing and Volk just sitting watching them fight each other. There's clear tension. I saw a ton of different reports that were conflicting, but about guys in Lopez's camp beating up guys in Yair's camp for beating up someone in Lopez's camp. So who knows what really happened there? But either way, there's clear tension, and you see it in the UFC. We can go down to Silva and Bryce Mitchell, but when they're DC and John Jones, when there's clear tension, Khabib and Connor, any fight with like tension and animosity before the fight, it gets the fans going, the commentators, the crowd, the fighters themselves. It is a way better product and something the UFC, in my mind, should be pushing. Maybe they don't love the PR of guys fighting and being aggressive like that, but the times I get the most hyped up for fights is when guys have that energy and animosity before the fight even begins. So it makes Lopez is coming off that loss. Yair's coming off this win. It makes perfect sense. It's a contending fight for Yair. If he beats Lopez, he'd get the next title shot, assuming Volk wins and stays active. For Lopez, who knows? Maybe he'd have to maybe fight Evlive or something else after that because I don't know if I'd want to see Lopez come right back to get Volk if he hasn't leveled up in any way. And I'm not sure Yair would be that guy to do that, but that is the very obvious fight there in featherweight. And then we can move on to the co-main event for 314, which was Patty the Batty Pimblett. I can hear the music right now versus Michael Chandler. Oh man, that was an interesting fight. A lot of questions before and after the effects of the fight. Is Patty really good? Is Chandler really bad? There's a lot of things going on. I was very surprised by Patty. I love watching Patty. I love watching him fight. I think one thing to note is how humongous he looked. Chandler's obviously small. HGH is like shrinking him and making him wider and just grow as just like a ball of muscle, as Rogan would call him. But Patty looked humongous for the division, and he looked like a lot healthier as well. And maybe bulking up to 400 pounds and getting yourself diabetes between every fight was not working for Patty. But one thing I would like to note before we get into the fight itself is Colby Covington after the fight was talking trash, and he is irrelevant, by the way. It doesn't matter what he
Mhm.
says, but about Patty's opponents and Bobby Green, Tony Ferguson, like he debatably lost to Jared Gordon. Like I like Patty Pimblett, but his track record was straight up not good. And I'll be the first to say it. I had Chandler TKOing him bad. He leaves that chin out. I know Scousers don't get knocked out as he would say, but he leaves that chin out bad every single fight. He still did in the Chandler fight, even though he wasn't punished for it. And he looked bad against Tony. He looked great against, washed Bobby, as you would call him, King Green. So it really is like, I just don't know how good Patty is. I'm a huge fan of him, but I'll hear what you have to say about the fight itself, and then we can go back to what it means for the future of both fighters.
Yeah, I mean, we both had Chandler winning this fight, even though we've both been on the Patty bandwagon since the beginning. But I honestly didn't think he was going to win this fight. He went out there and he brutalized him. Um, I mean, he just looked very good. Like you said, he looked massive overall. He just looked so much taller, even though there's not that much of a height difference when we look at it. He just looked like he was the bigger guy, and he really was. Um, when we look at the height difference, there's only a 2 inch height difference, and there's only a 1.5 inch reach difference, assuming they're probably close to the same size. It looked like Patty was like double the size of Chandler in that fight. Um, we didn't get as exciting of a fight as we would have hoped for, comparatively to other fights that we've seen from Chandler. Obviously, it was exciting to see the knockout, but I expected kind of a little bit of a back and forth. But Patty was just going down there. And he does the thing. Once he gets close to a finish, he just goes for it. And he got it in this one. Bloodied up Michael Chandler. Like you said, Colby Covington, Mr. USA, trying to get himself relevant after the fight as well. But for both of these guys, I mean, it is a little interesting because there's a lot of questions to ask. I honestly think Patty Pimblett's one fight away from the belt at this point, because you have to capitalize on this if you're the UFC. He's one of the biggest stars. People are talking about him fighting McGregor. I don't want to see McGregor, okay? Like, um, I don't need to see him. I think if Patty fights McGregor right now, that doesn't really, it'll help his career in a payday wise, but he's one fight away from getting a championship fight. So I think he should try to stay away from that. And what we saw from Volk this weekend, bouncing back to become champion, is I think what you and many of the other McGregor fans have been hoping for. It just happened in a different guy. But for Patty, you're in a perfect spot right now because this division is very logged at the top. I mean, we talk about this every single episode, but we don't know what's going to happen with a champion right now. Someone's going to be the odd man out. So Patty just fights whoever that is, right? You know, he's ranked eighth right now, but he has all that momentum. Whoever fights for the belt, whether it's Islam versus Ilya, whether it's Charles versus Armin, if there's an interim belt, whoever's the odd man out, I think Patty slides in there. If it's Justin Gaethje, if Justin Gaethje's let out of a fight, I think he could fight Justin Gaethje easily. Do I think he's going to win easily? No, but I think it would be an easier fight for him to walk into because he has all the momentum going in. I don't know necessarily if he can beat one of these top guys. I'm still a little skeptical, but He's on a fantastic run right now, so who knows? I think he's going to be fighting one of those top guys. Holloway is going to be fighting Poirier. So between Islam, Armin, Charles, and Justin, there's going to be an odd guy out with Ilya coming in as well. So I think give Patty a top three guy and see what happens. You have to capitalize on this. After that finish, I think he deserves this the way that he brutalized Michael Chandler, who may not have a great track record in the UFC recently, but he's still a formidable guy. So I don't know. Who do you think Patty should fight next?
Yeah, so and I'll just give my thoughts on the fight and then going right into that where Chandler definitely is formidable and he's a tough opponent where it is tough. When I was watching fights back and watching his career back to prepare for this card, man, McGregor really did take 2 years off his career and Chandler's turning 39 this month. And MMA is a young man sport. That's really hard to see, and especially the way he fought, the losing streak he's on and not fighting for 2 years. Let's say none of that McGregor stuff happens, and Chandler's 36 right now, turning 37. He could have four more fights left in addition to what he has now. He could be on a win, like so much could be different, but he didn't have that. He's on a losing streak, and Chandler always brings excitement. The Poirier fight, I watched that. That was one of the best fights of the last like 5 years or so in my mind. There was a lot of cheating going on, but it was entertaining. It was exciting. Chandler looked very good. And one thing maybe I made too much of a deal of was his last fight versus Oliveira. He looked so good. He was very close to beating Oliveira. I'll say it. He lost the I called Chandler if man, just like Herbert, but it's true. He's always like if he got Oliveira off his back, if he dropped Poirier, if he finished Oliveira. It's always going to be that way with him. But going into the Patty fight, Patty was fighting these terrible guys with bad track records, and Chandler's almost beating these dogs at the top of the division. So in my mind, I was like, Chandler's just a level above Patty. And I really did think that. And then Patty just absolutely mauled him. He destroyed him. I was impressed with Patty's IQ because he clearly, I watch like his videos he makes. He clearly works very hard. He's clearly a talented grappler, and he has never been KO'd. Whenever he does get hurt or whenever he has a weak spot, even if it seems like he's tired, he just ends up fighting way harder and getting that finish he's going for. And I was impressed where Chandler has a very predictable game plan, and it's just fucking. Oh, my bad. I can't say that. Anyway, my bad, my bad.
Yeah,
Chandler's
I
game
mean,
plan.
like you said, Chandler just has a very unpredictable style. And
Yeah,
I think what you were getting at is the math in this fight. Like, usually we try not to use MMA math, but a guy who got I mean, Patty Pimblett, right? Realistically, right? If we're talking about his career, he lost to Gordon. He lost that fight. Like, it's pretty obvious he lost that fight. He went 3 rounds with Tony Ferguson in 2023, the big 2023. And then he finishes your boy King Green in the first round, which is all right. But it just doesn't make very much sense that the guy that just went all the way to decision against Oliveira and was jumping and like throwing him on his back just because he was like bored and still had a lot in the gas tank just got finished by Patty Pimblett. I don't know. We're in an interesting timeline. Also, Patty is a submission threat, as we know. I mean, 3 submission wins in the UFC. So he called out Charles, said he was the best submission artist in UFC history. So we'll see if that happens. But like you were saying, who do you think should be the next guy for Patty?
yeah. So, what I was gonna get at there is that Patty, his striking, I thought it was a whole level below Chandler. Chandler's very predictable with left hook, just swinging overhands. And then against Oliveira, he did so good on the ground. So Patty's game plan was incredible to me, but his striking was also very good and his grappling. So he called out Dustin, Justin, Charles, and the little posh boy Armin. But Dustin, it seems very clearly, is fighting Max Holloway. In my mind, Ilya is 100% worthy of fighting Islam right now. I do not want to see Ilya fight a contender. Not saying that he won't lose and he's better than them, but the stuff Ilya's done, he has to be fighting Islam. I don't care. He is 100% worthy of it. So in my mind, the best name that popped up is Justin Gaethje. I think that would be a great fight. And the reason I brought up the Chandler stuff is if you told me even a week ago before that fight, Patty versus Gaethje, I would say Gaethje would give Patty like he would give him CTE within 30 seconds, and he would knock that chin out so bad. But we just saw it against Chandler. Patty clearly is better than most people thought, including me. So I think the sky is the limit right now. One more contending fight, he wins. As you said, you got to push your prospects, even if they maybe are a little overhyped. You just got to do it. Like Sean O'Malley, he got pushed. He knocked out Aljo, won the belt, and then obviously it's been down from there. Not too bad, but you got to push your guys. Patty's 7-0 right now. That's pretty good. If you look at his competition now with Chandler on there, with a KO finish of Michael Chandler, maybe Chandler is just very bad and washed now. But in my mind, Justin Gaethje, number 3 contender right now, is the most obvious pick. And I'd be fine with Charles versus Arman fighting again. It was a very close, very competitive fight. Patty Charles would be fun, but there's really a lot you can do there. But I think Gaethje is the best for Patty. You get that on the resume. I've been seeing Islam call out Gaethje recently. Like, what is the point in that? I'm not saying Gaethje can't win that, but like, what are we doing? You have Ilya right there. So in my mind, Poirier's already booked, Holloway's already booked. You give Patty Gaethje, and then even if he loses that, he really isn't losing that much stock, and then he can move from there. But as the undefeated guy right now, the only lightweight that high up that is undefeated that I can think of really. So I think you got to feed Patty as high up as you can, as fast as you can, and he might be that next star. I loved obviously we were on the Patty wagon, but I hated the barstool hype he was getting. It seemed a little like the Sean Strickland Pereira fans of just the corny kind of UFC fans. But Patty's legit. Like he's here to stay. He is very good. So you got to move him up as high as you can, as fast as you can.
Yeah. So my question, I guess, next would be for Michael Chandler, what do you do with him? In my opinion, I mean, one guy I want to see him fight. Um, my first name that I thought of was Moicano. I think the loser just has to leave. The loser goes to the GFL at that point. Um, Moicano,
I
you
thought
know,
you liked Moicano.
no, I do. I think he's gonna win. So I think we can ship off Chandler, but both of these guys are reaching that unk age right now. So I think it would
Yeah,
be
well,
a good fight for both of them. And it seems like the other one can just finally leave. If not, I mean, the thing about Chandler is I don't think he's gonna fight a contender, right? That just doesn't make sense. I think he wants to fight a guy like Moicano. That's easy to sell. He's a guy that was just in a championship fight, has a pretty big fan base. No one wants to see Michael Chandler versus Grant Dawson or Beneil Dariush. I know you love Beneil Dariush. You're a big fan of him. Um, but like realistically, do you want to see him fight one of those guys, or do you want to see him fight Money Moicano? Like you got to sell this guy. This guy that is realistically like the track record of Tai Tuivasa within the UFC. When we're looking like record wise, like this is reaching a bad level. Yes, he's been in these fights, but I don't know. Recently, lost to Patty, lost to Charles, lost to Dustin, beat Tony Ferguson, lost to Justin, lost to Charles again. So, not a great track record in the UFC. Obviously, he's going up against great guys every time, but you still have to look at it from the wins and losses point. Like, yeah, he's going to give you an entertaining fight, but he's not winning. So at some point, I think you just got to give him a fun fight like this against Money Moicano. Maybe you have another guy that you would want to see him fight against. Maybe a guy like Fiziev. I don't know. Let me know who you think.
yeah. So I've thought a lot about this, and I'm gonna give 4 options, and then it sounds like that's a lot, but I'll explain them. So start of 2024, Chandler said, I'm going to KO Conor McGregor. I'm going to KO Islam. Boom, I'm the champ, goes out on top. And when Chandler said, see you at the top, before the Oliveira fight, I'm like, we're going to see Chandler at the top. Like, this guy's good. But look at, he's 39. He's 2-5, 3-fight losing streak. His last win, I believe, was Tony Ferguson, if I got that right. Did
Yep.
not age well, for being honest. His UFC wins, Dan Hooker. Tony Ferguson. That's not that good. Let's just face it. But he is, when he says, the most entertaining lightweight in the planet. That is true. That is a fact. So when I think of Michael Chandler, I agree. You can't just feed him a undefeated prospect who's going to jab him and point fight him and knock him out. No one wants to see that. You want big fights. So option one is exhausted by now, but it is Conor McGregor. Chandler needs pay-per-view fights. McGregor is, I'll say it, he's not fighting again. He's washed. It's
Let's
over.
move on to the next one. I'm not
Okay.
listening to McGregor in the Big
Okay. I'm
25.
just saying if McGregor wanted to,
In the
if he
Big
wanted to come
25,
back, it's Chandler.
we're not talking about McGregor again.
Two washed, overweight, balding guys could fight each other, and it would be like the most interesting pay-per-view of the year. That's all I'll say.
Tai
Anyway,
Tuivasa, is that what you're mentioning?
no, I did not say that. Anyway, and then all right, so two options here. So I think Chandler could be a guy that could change weight classes. And I'll
Okay.
explain why. He goes
Okay.
through a decent weight cut, but he
Mhm.
is pretty short. So one guy that popped
Yeah,
out to
he's like
me,
5'8". He's basically like the shortest you can get.
if you were 5'8", if he was like 5'9", that'd be above average, some
Yeah.
would say, but 5'8" is short. Anyway, if he wanted to, you reestablish the rivalry that I thought would happen for you 14 against Pitbull.
Okay.
Two Bellator champs, they had a rivalry. Pitbull knocked out Chandler before in Bellator. And if
Hmm.
we're being honest, the guys that come over when they're 38 that are champs in some other division, they're not legit. And they win a fight and then they lose a few Chandler style and then they flame out. I would like to see, like I said earlier, a real rivalry with animosity. Pitbull hates Chandler. They have beef, and Chandler and Pitbull have the same fighting style. They kind of stand there and start. They have heavy hands and good chins, and they just swing at each other. That would be a great fight. If it would be at a catch weight, 155, 145, it wouldn't matter to me because neither guy is gonna get the UFC bout. If we're being honest, Chandler's path is over for that. Before Oliveira, I thought he legit had a chance for the belt. It's over. He needs money fights. So one option is down to Pitbull. The next one is another overweight, washed, uh, overrated, not very good bum who should retire at welterweight, which Chandler tried to fight at welterweight against McGregor. Colby Covington.
Okay.
Colby sucks. He's on the same level to me as Chandler. I did like him at a point in time, just like Chandler, but they're old, they suck, they're losing their athletic prime. I think that would be a great fight at 170 or catch weight, whatever it may be. These two guys were both college wrestlers. They both are very entertaining outside the octagon, at least, and that would be a banger fight. But I'll give my last option, which is actually a lightweight fight. If he somehow wants to try and contend at lightweight, even though it's over, Benoit Saint Denis was a prospect, now is a kind of hoping to be a prospect still. It's a guy that was one Poirier round away from maybe fighting for the belt by now. I really believed in him back then, and he's looked terrible since then. They're both similar, bigger guys in stature that have a ton of power. So I think in the division, the best guy is Benoit Saint Denis at the bottom of the rankings. If not, I don't think Chandler's good enough to compete in the rankings anymore at lightweight.
Yeah, I mean, you gave some great options. I was thinking about BSD before when I was making these. BSD, similar to Steve Urseg, both of those guys, similar to that Dominic Reyes downfall. We see these guys move all the way up, and then something happens and they move down. But I think that would be an interesting one. I think I've talked before, a few months ago when we were trying to find a fight. I think Chandler versus Covington makes sense. I think that's a great double retirement fight. And both of those guys those guys will sell. You put them you get them together in a press conference, they're going to be able to sell the fight pretty well. People are going to want to watch them beat each other up, and there's going to be people that want them both to knock each other out. So that's a pretty good one to talk about as well. I like that one, but realistically, maybe like one or two more fights, if that, for him. Maybe even a guy. I mean, we could look at Dylan Danis, potentially for another option. I don't know if you would like to see that one or not, but I think
In the GFL, maybe?
yeah, that's the level that we might be getting to, unfortunately, for Chandler. But overall, I mean, Patty, I think he's legit. Is he an actual contender? I think we'll have to see in this next fight. I think both of us could agree. if he goes out there and beats Justin Gaethje, I think he deserves a title fight. But I mean, in my opinion, if he gets knocked out within 30 seconds from Justin Gaethje, I wouldn't be too surprised. I don't want to downplay him at all, but I'm really not sure if he's at that complete elite level. This proved that he's there. He's a contender, but is he a title contender? I guess we'll have to wait to see in the next one. Um, Talking next, we can kind of merge these two together a little bit because they're in the same division. Bryce Mitchell versus John Silva, and then Pitbull debuting versus Yair. We talked about Yair a little bit earlier. He went through, dominated Pitbull. Pitbull just, I mean, I don't really know what was going on. He just didn't really do anything. Kind of disappointing fight from him. Yair can move up and potentially get a number one contender fight against Diego Lopez. On the opposite side, though, a young prospect moving up in John Silva. I don't know. It seems like every pay-per-view they say his
I
name
go by
different.
John. I go by
It,
John.
I think it's John now. I'm pretty sure it was Gene earlier, but now it's John. So, um, he's been insane. This was a guy last year that I remember we were watching during the summer when he took those two fights within like a month of each other and just got those brutal knockouts. He's been insane. The fighting nerds are crazy right now. And I do have a question about them after this, but whatever you want to talk about between those two fights, who's next? John Silva, officially ranked now at 11th, and um, Yair at tied at 4 with Mavzar, and Bryce Mitchell unfortunately fell out of the rankings. And Pitbull not ranked either since he didn't win. But
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot to talk about. I think Jair we did cover. Should fight Lopez. Probably will fight Lopez. It's the fight to make for sure. Pitbull was very disappointing. Uh, it's the older guys from Bellator coming over. I think he's just losing that athleticism and energy and a high paced. Yair Rogan was kind of glazing him, but Yair's a very athletic, fast, and like twitchy striker. Great kicks. So that's like the worst guy he could have fought, if we're being honest. Like, if you are like struggling against top competition in your first fight in the UFC, coming from Bellator against not as good guys, Yair is like the worst guy you want to fight in the division. He's gonna keep you at range and just keep kicking you in the head, keep jabbing you and just hitting you with kicks. And that's just not what Pitbull definitely wanted and was not ready for. So I mean, I think he should fight Chandler, but Pitbull to me should not even be fighting for a rank spot, in my opinion. There could be guys like maybe Emmett could be fun, but I think Emmett would KO Pitbull, to be honest. But I think he needs a kind of slower, smaller, guy more similar to him, like Chandler, but maybe like Calvin Cutter, someone coming off, I think a 4 fight losing streak now. But either way, for Pitbull, it's not looking good. He's getting a lot older. And then going on to Silva versus Mitchell. I'll start with Bryce Mitchell. Um, I did not pick him because Silva is that good. I think most people knew he was that good, and a lot of people were picking based off maybe political reasons or other reasons going on in the fight. But John Silva is very good. I'm not really too disheartened by Bryce Mitchell's performance. I mean, like once upon a time, he looked great against Taporia, and then he got flatlined by Emmett, and now this. So he's out of the rankings. I think the featherweight rankings are a travesty right now. I'm not sure what is going on there. Not saying he deserves to be in it still, but that is tough. But the name I had for Bryce Mitchell is Calvin Cutter. He's a good wrestler, a cardio guy, and someone that isn't gonna kind of destroy Bryce in one round to put the pressure on. But he is a very tough vet, and Cutter's on that huge losing streak. If he loses to Bryce, maybe you cut him, maybe he retires. He's very old now, a lot of damage on him. But Bryce is still, I don't know if you can call him a prospect, but he's still like a contender in my eyes. Even though he's falling out of the rankings, he has a ton of skill on the ground. We've seen it. He is decent striking. He's working on. I think he's maturing a lot as a fighter, inside and outside the octagon, probably. So I think Calvin Cutter is a great name to get him back into the bottom of the rankings and someone that's not going to go for a finish in one round that Bryce can work with. I mean, he hasn't had that much time in the octagon where he's not just getting mauled in his last few fights. So moving on to his opponent, John Silva, who did maul him. Man, he looks good. Choking out Bryce like that, that was very impressive. We already know how good his striking is. One name that for Silva, he fought Kevin Vallejos, a DWCS guy, on the Contender Series. I think Vallejos is, I think these guys are going to meet like for the belt in like 2 years. That's how I feel about both of them. Incredible strikers, but Silva is so good. His striking, his energy, he has so much power. So for me, you have to start pushing him. The first name I thought of was Emmett, someone that has a ton of power that they could strike with. But in the new rankings, Emmett's at 10, Silva's at 11. That does nothing for Silva. As we said with Paddy Pimblett, if you're these prospects, it seems like the UFC is struggling to find their stars right now. So when you have a guy like Silva that gets finishes, he's barking all over, he's getting these wins in a row. I think you got to push him. You got to push him up as fast as you can. So my next pick is honestly, if we did Lopez versus Yair, I think Brian Ortega could be a great fight. Where Ortega's a vet, I'm not high on him at all, but he does. He's 7 right now in the rankings. He was 6 just a day ago, but I think you could show John Silva can grapple. You're giving me a no this whole time. I think John Silva. You can give me your take. I think John Silva could beat a great grappler and then knock out and get Ortega down, or you could have someone like Arnold Allen or Lerone Murphy, two. I'd say prospects in the division, but I think you have to move John Silva up as high as you can.
Yeah. For me personally, I mean, the two guys that I wrote down, I'll disagree with you. For
Mm.
John Silva, I think he should fight either Lerone Murphy or Brian Ortega. In my opinion, just because I think a guy like Brian Ortega, who I haven't really seen that much about people saying John Silva versus Ortega, so I don't know if I'm the first one to think about this, but I think that would be a good fight to see. Ortega in the world of wrestling, they have these older guys put over the younger guys. Obviously, fighting is different because they're actually fighting, but the gatekeepers, whatever you want to call it, he put over Lopez. Lopez beat Ortega, got that title fight. This would be a perfect time for John Silva to go out there, fight a guy like Ortega. I do think a Lerone Murphy fight would be really fun, but like we said, sometimes they like to protect their prospects. Both of those guys, very similar, undefeated paths, whatever you want to say. So I think they may try to wait and push those guys up a little bit more. That would be a great fight to see. So I do think that John Silva versus Brian Ortega would be a good fight. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
What's the bid here? Why were you shaking your head at me no when I said that?
Oh, so for Bryce Mitchell, a guy I was thinking about,
Yeah.
this one's very different from yours. Actually,
Hmm.
this time, a guy that's a
Yeah.
little bit lower down. He's not ranked, but a guy in Nathaniel Wood. You can let me know about that.
Okay.
How you feel about that one? But he's a guy that is like top 30-ish. Goes up against a guy like Bryce Mitchell and would potentially, that's a win where he wouldn't be ranked, but he would be one fight away from being ranked, in my opinion. So I think for Bryce, I think he's at a point now where he's going to be fighting these younger guys. A guy like Wood, who two back-to-back wins right now. He's 31. I think it would be good to see him go over. Obviously, a guy from Cage Warriors as well before. So I think this could be a time where he could get that big kind of big name UFC win because, as we know, I mean Bryce Mitchell is still going to be a favorite. I don't know if I want to say fan favorite. People know who he is. So he's still a big enough name. So a guy like Nathaniel Wood, I think that would be a good fight for him to be able to move up. Kind of one of those guys that's in that like prospect area. I think what Mitchell's next fight will be against a guy like that moving up. Or you could just, I don't know, you could have him fight Sean Woodson, I guess. Um,
Just throwing
Interesting.
that out there.
Just throwing that one out there. Or we could see another Kron Gracie rematch, throwing that one out there as well, giving you guys some options.
Maybe
But
in GFL we could see that.
yeah, I mean, obviously it's easy to look back, but John Silva being minus 200 for this fight, I don't know who made that. Like I would have had this at minus 500 or more in my opinion. Like obviously it's easy to look back, but I don't understand that at all. Like people are so obsessed with how good the fighting nerds are. And now John Silva, everyone's saying how great he is, but the odds just didn't made no sense to me. And I picked Silva to win. So I mean, I'm not coming out saying, "Oh, well, obviously he finished him, so that's why." But Like Bryce Mitchell just fought Kron Gracie, one of the worst fighters that, I mean, we talked about this before when they fought, but from him to go to that to John Silva, who was a killer, I don't know, those odds made no sense to me, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of different fights too. Pitbull, I guess I didn't get into him. A potential fight for him. One guy that you mentioned was Josh Emmett. I would like to see that. Or if you want a conflicting style, I do think that he should fight for those rankings. I do think he could end up being ranked with a win like that, but even interesting, a guy like Aljo. I think that would be an interesting fight to see. A guy who's at 9, so either Aljo or Josh Emmett. I do think he's like a top 10 guy. I don't think he's going to be going on a title run, but I do think that he's probably good enough to be ranked right now. So hopefully we actually see him in his like true form because Yair, like you said, just a bad matchup for him overall because he's so committed to like rushing at guys and using that strength that he has. So being able to kind of like go against a guy like Aljo, who's going to try to wrestle him, but still be able to go out there and get those big shots in, or Josh Emmett. I mean, that's just a great fight to watch as well.
Yeah, I guess now that you say it, Bryce Mitchell probably doesn't deserve a ranked fight looking at his resume right now, but I think Calvin Cutter doesn't deserve to be ranked. So, Nathaniel Wood would be good. He's a guy that's been trying to, he's a prospect no longer, been trying to break into the rankings for a while. But John Silva, yeah, I completely, I had him to maul Bryce in round two. He just chose to do it by submission. He really could have beat him any way he wanted to in that fight, and he showed that. And man, he looked good. But I'll ask you, it seems like every time these guys fight the fighting nerds, I change my rankings of them. Of what
Mhm.
the one that I think is best is the one that most recently fights. And I kind of thought that again, boy, he looked good. So out of the four, I guess, which one would you rank in a top four?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you another question after this. The hardest part about this is they're so active, except for who I think arguably is the best, the highest ranked guy in Berhalio. Because he's a top 5. I guess he hasn't fought in a while, which is weird. Like I, along with many other people, wanted to see him fight against Izzy or Imavov or whoever. I mean, he's at 6 right now, but realistically, top 6, top 5, whatever you want to say, middleweight in the world right now. He's fantastic. I think recency bias could definitely play a part in this. I do think that he's probably the most complete. Prates, another great guy, obviously, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later. We'll see if he continues his winning streak as well. But I would probably say Brahalio, in my opinion, is the best right now. John Silva at 11th right now. Rufy is the only one who I believe isn't ranked, but had a great finish in his last fight. But I do think it's Berhalio. And before you give me, well, I guess you can answer it at the same time. This could also play into what we talk about later. But who do you think the first to lose in the UFC from the Fighting Nerds is going to be? Do you think it's going to be Prates against Ian Machado Gary? Or do you think it's going to be someone else?
I mean, that's tough because we know who's booked with Protest versus Gary coming up, but I guess I'll answer with my ranking and then I'll explain why I think that. But at number four, I have Rufy, actually. I think that your boy King Green is just pretty not very good at all. And that
Yeah.
was a great kick by Rufy, but um uh, he looked, I don't know, his competition's been very bad, to be honest. And he didn't look against like Yon Top, like he was like
Yeah.
20 pounds overweight and he got cut. He was like 0 and maybe 1-3 in the UFC with that loss. So I have Rufy at four. I actually have Protez at three. And then
Mhm.
even though I like him as a striker, but this may surprise. I actually have Silva at one, maybe it's recency bias. Bravo at two. Bravo, let I'll rephrase it this way because Protez is fighting in like 1 or 2 weeks, whenever that fight is. I would actually have if they were all fighting in a week, which one I think would lose first against the average comp. I would probably have Barajo. I think he might lose soon. I think he is very high in the rankings right now at 6, but middleweight's kind of in a week. I don't think it's as deep. it's very top heavy, I'd say. I don't think it's very deep at all, though, compared to what other guys like Silva or Rufi are dealing with right now. But Barajo's good, but like Jared Cannonier, like went to decision with him. It was a back and forth fight, I guess. Barajo definitely was the better fighter, but I think Silva might be the best one. He has that power in the division, and I am kind of saying that because the fight I mentioned earlier, him versus Vallejos. If you ever get to see Vallejos fight, he is incredible. He's going to be ranked soon. He's only 21, I believe, and he's just one of the best strikers in the division. So, and Silva pieced him up. He looked even better against him. So I think Silva. We both had Ortega, which is the fight to make, in my opinion, that gatekeeper status that you said. But I think Silva's the best one right now. But I would have him, Brojo, and Protez pretty similar, and then I'd have Rufi like a little bit lower. But I think
Yeah, I
being
think
part of
that's
the
fair.
fighting nerds, yeah, I think being part of the fighting nerds kind of gets that like, when they put on the glasses, everyone's like, oh, these guys are good. And there's no obviously training together, whatever they do together makes them better. Besides like smoking cigarettes, maybe, but like it's like the Makachev thing I think we mentioned sometimes where just because you have a last name or you're part of a certain gym doesn't mean you're like invincible or untouchable. So I think the next fight we see that is with Protez against Gary, but I guess we can get into that after we mention your boy Dom Reyes.
Yeah, we can just go through this quickly. Dominic Reyes
Yeah.
is back. I mean, it's great to see. Great storyline going forward for him. I guess I'll just ask you real quick. I really don't care about Nikita Krylov, honestly. Like he took a time off. I don't really care at all. If I'm being honest. He could fight. I don't know. I had him. I made a fight for him just because I made a fight for everyone. I said against Volkan Ozdemir again. But realistically, I don't really care. But for Reyes, I think he's one fight away from getting a championship fight. Um, I think if he wants to wait, he could easily fight the winner of Jamal Hill versus Roundtree. But I was kind of going off based off if he doesn't want to wait that long because that fight's in a little while, so he would have to wait till the end of the year. If not, I think he could fight against Jan again, and I think that would be a great fight as well. Very different styles, but I mean, Dom Reyes has all the plot armor in the world right now, so I think either Jan or the winner of Jamal versus Khalil Roundtree, in my opinion.
Yeah, and light heavyweight's in a weird spot. We talk about it every time Pereira fights, but it's like there's guys like Krylov and like Ozdemir where it's just like, do they even fight? Like they're just always like in the rankings like perennially. And it seems like Jan was in there before he obviously fought last time around in a very boring fight at that. But it's like there's no like motion going on in the division right now. The Hill versus the Roundtree fight is a perfect matchmaking fight right there. That is exactly what I wanted to see. I wish it already happened. I don't remember. Was that supposed to be on 312 or I believe that was
It's
supposed to happen right
uh
around now.
it was supposed to happen last year and then it was supposed to happen
Okay.
earlier. This is like the third time it's been rebooked
Yeah, so that's like the perfect fight to make.
because
It
of
just has to
your
happen.
boy.
It's probably something to do with Roundtree and the visa and scheduling concerns. Has nothing to do with him, of course. But in my mind, I don't want Dom Reyes. I think I've picked against him in I think two of the three where he did win coming back. I thought I was kind of not on the little wagon of him coming back. I thought he was kind of done. He was washed, like his hairline just never coming back. But he did. He's on 3-5. Nice, right? But he's on a 3-0 win streak, and he definitely
All
does look very
KOs.
good. All KOs, yeah, and they've all looked very good. But I guess I'll start with Krylov versus Ozdemir. I guess is that I had that written down. I truly don't care if they want to fight once every 2 years and be a top 10 or 11 ranked guy, whatever. But Dom Reyes, I think next up I had Carlos Ulberg, someone that just fought, someone that just won, and more of the fact that I think it could potentially not be a title contending fight, but just hear me out, little bracket forming. We have Roundtree versus Hill. Winner of that fights. And Olberg is going to be ready when Reyes is, I assume, whether that's late summer, early fall, maybe even in the winter if they want. But I think they'll both be ready. So let's say Jamal Hill knocks out Roundtree in round one, 10 seconds into the fight, which Hill predicted. You give that to the winner of Olberg versus Dom Reyes. And then if Reyes wins, he's back to fighting for the belt, just like he did against John Jones. Yep. Question. Yes.
Yeah, well, I like your idea here, but the only problem
Okay.
is,
Okay.
where do you leave Yuri at that point? Because I feel like he's the odd man out. In my opinion, the reason why I left Ulberg out of this is I think you have Magomed versus Alex, and then you have Yuri versus Ulberg as the next two fights.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely fair. I guess, see, I have a very bad mindset of activity where I think guys should be overly active, and maybe I'm used to Pereira in the division, fighting once every like 2 or 3 months. But in a perfect world, Pereira beats Ankalaev, their rematch ASAP as soon as possible. And that does not mean, once a year. I want that to be literally as soon as possible. And then you could have Yuri Ankalaev maybe come up, but what I was getting at either way, I think Olberg is also not that good of a prospect. I think he's a little overrated. I think by default that there's no good young guys in the whole division. He's kind of at the top for some reason, and barely beating a really 42-year-old Jan that looked terrible in that fight. But in my mind, someone like Dom Reyes who got robbed against John Jones, if we're gonna be honest here and call a spade, I think you have to push that on a 3 fight win streak. He's coming back. I think once again, and if Dom Reyes, you keep pushing him up and up. Once he loses, all right, you don't get like three chances. Like he had his time, but I think you
Yeah.
should reward him for having a crazy comeback like this. He has 3 KOs in a row, as you said. So I think pushing Reyes is the best thing possible, and having him fight for the belt again. If we're being honest, that would be pretty cool, win or lose.
Yeah. So next up, moving on to our fight nights coming up. We do have a bit of a break, but after this, we have what was supposed to be Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree, which also got pushed again. But now we have Pratas fighting against Ian Machado Gary, a guy similar to Paddy Pimblett, where the fans turned against, everyone loved him, fans turned against him. Now he's back. He's proven that he's a legit guy. And we also have in the co-main event big time Anthony Smith in his retirement fight against Zhang Ming Yang. Then we got Giga Chad versus David Onama. Mikel Pereira versus Magomedov. Rude Boy Randy Brown's on here. Ikram's on here. You know, this is definitely outside of that main event. This is what we look at when you say we got a fight night coming up. These are the guys. So Schnell's on here as well. You know, just some overall legends when we're talking about the fight night cards. Shout out Ian Gary though for stepping up. They chose this one to go on the road with instead of the Apex. You know, we both hate the Apex, but outside of Ian Gary versus Prates, if you threw this in the Apex, I don't think anyone would have been mad. But I guess we do have some interesting fights to talk about. Before we go into that main event, if there's anything you want to talk about outside of that, maybe Anthony Smith's comeback. He could have a Dominic Reyes title run, or Mikel Pereira, Rude Boy Randy Brown, Ikram. Who I don't know. Is there anyone else you want to mention?
I mean, I will just say this is actually the most fight night of all time. If we're being honest, there's some names on. This is what I want out of a fight night. I want a ton of names that everyone knows you're excited to watch some fight. It's not two, 19-year-old like women's prospects that are 0-0 from the Contender Series that no one cares about. But there's a lot. I wouldn't say there's any good names, but there's a lot of names. Matt Schnell is coming out of retirement somehow. Anthony Smith, I never want to see him fight again. He might be my least favorite fighter. Lionheart is he's gonna get KO'd. I'm gonna call it right now. Put your money on it right now. Anthony Smith is getting KO'd by Minyang Zhang. But there's some Giga Chad's pretty cool. Alex Garoff was, one fight away, so nothing like nothing to like make put in your schedule for, but it's a pretty exciting card in my opinion. And uh, besides Anthony Smith,
Yeah. And also, I mean, what we're saying here with this being a fight night, it's not bad. Like I don't think anyone's complaining about this, but like when you're building a fight night, this is exactly what you want. You got a really hype main event. Outside of that, you just have guys that just only fight on fight nights. That's just how it is. Um, so I don't know. We'll see what happens with some of these fights. Obviously, the main event we can dive into here as well. Another guy that I want to do talk about is that I'm a little interested to see is Damon Blackshear. You know, he was decent for a while. Then he lost to Mario Bautista by decision, and then got finished in 18 seconds after that. But he won his last fight, so maybe he'll be able to come back. But Ian Gary versus Prates, very interesting fight for Gary here because he's coming off of a number one contender fight for the belt against Shavkat, and put on a very good performance, and now is fighting against one of the toughest prospects in the division and is risking a lot. Um, Ian Gary is risking like a considerably more amount in this fight than I think Pratas is, which is kind of scary when you're looking at Ian Gary. Like if he wins this fight, obviously it's good on his resume, but he's definitely not gaining as much as Pratas would from this. And I think we all assume that Ian Gary was maybe not going to get a number one contender fight, but at least a guy in the top six after this. So it is interesting to look at that as well.
Yeah, I have a ton uh just to think about for this fight where Ian Gary said he didn't even know who it was when he accepted it, which I do believe. But I also believe that he doesn't care. And I think he has balls. And I just think he's way too hated on, if we're being honest. He's got two of them. But I've never turned against Ian Gary. He gets way too much hate. And then he put on a terrific like performance against Shavkat, almost choked him out, which nobody would have seen coming. But Ian Gary is straight up very good. He has a ton of talent. He's still young. I love that he took this fight. I love he took the Shavkat fight. He's showing that he doesn't care who it is. He'll fight anyone, which not a lot of guys are willing to like walk the walk after they do all the talking before. It's like none of them do. It's like even Islam. It's like it seems like they're afraid to fight, which is ridiculous. So I think Ian Gary should be rewarded for this fight. I don't care that you're fighting the number 15 guy, or the number 13 guy. I think if you win this fight, you give him the title shot next. Ian Gary is that good. No matter who wins of JDM versus Bilal, I think Ian Gary deserves to be right up there. He's so close to beating Shavkat, and I do think he's better than Prates, but a ton of respect for taking this fight. I think maybe getting all his mindset's different after getting all that negative attention, maybe, but he seems like he's in a great spot, like mentally in the way he's training. He looks a lot bigger. I'll be honest, when he like came out with the vegan stuff, his wife, his boyfriend, whatever was going on with that, he looked like weak in the octagon. He looked like he had no muscle or any fat on him at all. I've seen him recently, and he looks a lot like more filled out in his frame for the weight class. So I think he's a better striker than people give him credit for. Like he's really fast and he's got a ton of power, and like I think he's very calm under against Shavkat. He looks very calm throughout the fight. So I think Prates is very good. I cannot wait to watch this fight, but I think Ian Gary's gonna maybe it's gonna be a point fight thing similar with MVP, but I think Ian Gary's gonna take the win here and then hopefully get a title shot right after.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ian Gary's going to come in here and win, but I think it's going to be a pretty good fight. It's going to be interesting to see what he does as well. Moving on to the next card after that, we only have two fight nights between our next pay-per-view. This one in Iowa is actually pretty interesting. We have Corey Sandhagen versus Figueiredo in the main event, and then RDR. I know you're a big fan of him. I know you've raved about how technical and great he is, against Bo Nickel. And then yeah, there's other people fighting
Montel
on this.
Jackson.
There's other people on this card as well, including Junior Taffa on the main card. So yeah, I think this is going to be two great fights between Sandhagen and Figueiredo. Not a number one contender fight, because as we know, Sean is getting the next title fight, and I don't see either one of these guys jumping either. I mean, I think the fight to make now that Sean's fighting Marab, it has to be Jan versus Umar as a number one contender fight, in my opinion. That's what makes sense. Corey versus Figueiredo, I don't think, unless someone gets a like 30-second finish in this, automatically gets the next title shot. But it is obviously one of those title contender fights. And then RDR versus Nickel. Nickel's not a heavy favorite at minus 245. But this is definitely a test for him. I know you don't love RDR, but I still do think it is a decent fight. RDR is ranked 13th, so I think there's a lot to gain from either guy from this fight as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to in this card and a lot to think about as well. Where when you go at the top, unfortunately for Sandhagen and Figgy, is they kind of get the short end of the stick no matter what division they are, no matter what year it is. It seems like they're always winning and they're just not getting the belt, like no matter what they do. And I think it's going to happen again. I think no matter what happens here, Jan and Umar is probably going to be that title contending fight. This is another case where I want O'Malley and Marab to fight ASAP, and then I want, let's say Marab wins, to fight ASAP after that against if it's Umar, Jan, one of these two even. Because there's a lot of names. There's a clear top like five at the top of the division right now, and they're cementing themselves as like the clear contenders above the guys like Mario Bautista and Chito Vera, who they're just not getting these win streaks to fight for the belt. But Sandhagen uh, is one of the highest IQ skilled guys in the UFC. He looked, I mean, Umar kind of ragdolled him, but it was such a tactical fight. It was really fun for both of them. And Figgy has looked incredible. I loved his move up to the division. He's looked incredible ever since then. I'm a huge fan of his, and I think he's one of the best bantamweights right now. So I love this fight, and I'm gonna guess that most people are taking Sandhagen, whether by decision or not. But I think Figgy is 100% good enough to win this fight, and even to fight for the belt before he gets too old. And that's a very good fight, but I think Figgy's got the win there. And then going down to the co-main, RDR versus Bo Nickel. I don't hate RDR, but I do complain about his striking. It's pathetic. I don't know how you're a double champion, you look like that. But I'm shocked they did this matchmaking, to be honest, where RDR is 2-0 in the UFC, just got signed last year. Bo Nickel has been kind of their golden lamb, however you want to put it, in the division. He's also been undefeated and sheltered quite a bit. This is a huge fight for Bo Nickel, a huge step up as well. And I'm gonna be honest, this is to get back into the rankings. He's been hovering around 15. I'm kind of concerned for Bo Nickel. I'll say it. He looked terrible against Craig. I'll put it bluntly. He really has to work on his actual MMA skills and his like striking approach. He had zero game plan, zero strategy. He said he just wanted the win, which I do appreciate, getting the win at all costs. But against when they feed you a name like Paul Craig and you're this undefeated prospect, they want you to make a show, make a name for yourself. Look what guys like Paddy Pimblett has done. If you get big wins, who knows how fast they can steamroll? Because Bo Nickel, he is new to MMA. He wants to take his time. And I 100%, that's a very smart way to do it rather than be a Sage Northcutt and fizzle out immediately. But that being said, when they feed you these easy names, you got to make a show out of it. You got to do something cool. And it just seems like Bo Nickel doesn't have that in him because I know he's that great Penn State wrestler, which, would happen there with Penn State, besides the obvious. But Bo Nickel, like, RDR is a very, very good grappler, and he is humongous. We saw it against Kevin Holland. RDR is massive for the weight class. He weighs more than Yuri, I believe, on fight night, which
Hmm.
is absurd. And Bo Nickel, he's a bigger guy himself. He's filled out for a middleweight, but he needs a game plan. I think he might need to switch camps or something, switch coaches. He needs to figure out something. I think striking heavy is the way to go. He has power. He should just defend takedowns with that wrestling bance, that freestyle wrestling. Uh, and then he should piece up RDR on the feet, get this fight over with. You do not want to be exhausted against RDR with with a massive RDR laying on top of you, Penn State shower style, and he's just dealing damage to you on the ground, and you can do nothing about it to stop him. But RDR, I'm still shocked they booked this. I think it's a huge fight, and I might even think RDR can win this one and stop Bo Nickel. At least give him maybe a reality check at least.
Yeah, I do think that there's definitely a lot. of stakes for both of those fights. But finally, ending this episode off talking about UFC 315. I mean, we have a pretty all right card. They announced some more fights, but nothing too fantastic. We do have two title fights though. Um, some fights I do want to talk about besides those to start off. We get to see Jose Aldo coming back as well, fighting another fight, trying to keep his run alive. BSD's on here as well against Alvarez, trying to get a win and stay ranked. Michael Morales versus Gilbert Burns, another great prospect. I think one of the more underrated, lesser known, sorry, not well known, in Morales. He's like very, very good, in my opinion. At 25 years old, this guy is a force in the welterweight division. And I think everyone's going to be introduced to him if you don't already know about him. Um, Valentina Shevchenko has a formidable fight against Farot, however you want to call her name. And then Bilal Muhammad versus JDM. Since our first episode, I've been waiting. I'm a big JDM guy. I think he's one of the more underrated guys in the UFC. I'm excited to see what he can do in this fight. I do think he could potentially win this fight. And this is a very big fight overall as well, because from what I've been hearing, if JDM beats Bilal, Islam is moving up to fight JDM. It seems like that's what's going to happen. That's just the murmurs I've been hearing about. But if Bilal stays champion, he's going to stay and fight against Ilya. And I think that's why they're waiting to announce these fights, because people have been waiting to see what's going on with Ilya. But I guess Khabib and them like respect Bilal a lot, so he doesn't want to fight Bilal. But if JDM wins, I heard that Islam is moving up to fight JDM, but wouldn't be vacating the title. Um, he would fight for the title against JDM, but not give up his belt, which would leave an interim fight between Ilya and whoever else it would happen to be, Armin Charles. So there's a lot going on with this main event as well. Like I said, I think JDM is one of the best boxers in the UFC. He is one of the best guys that can go and mix up those head and body shots. Like in a lot of time in the UFC, we don't see too many guys go for the body with like actual punches and not just body kicks. But JDM is, I mean, I have very high hope for him. I'm very excited to see him. I really hope that he recovered from that injury well. And I hope that he can go win this fight because he's a top five guy. I feel like people know who he is, but I don't think he's very well known really because he hasn't fought in a little bit. But I do think he is an elite level fighter.
Yeah, win or lose, this fight is going to put JDM in the spotlight. We saw with Sean Brady against Leon, where I feel like people didn't really care, know who they were, and they will. Sean Brady is number one contender now after his win over Leon, where he dominated. But JDM is probably a top three boxer in the UFC. Very impressive striking. And I mean, I really don't know what to think about the main event where Bilal's overhated 100%, but he does not have the finishing ability. But JDM,
Hey, he finished
he's
Sean
no,
Brady.
he did finish Sean Brady, which somehow is a good look now after beating Leon. But JDM is definitely a striking heavy guy that really does a ton of damage. He has very heavy hands, but he's not like Bilal is like or hate him, he's one of the most well-rounded guys in the UFC. I would say that he's been training with Islam and all them for a while, and he looks very good. I'll just say it where I'm just very split on this fight, honestly, because Bilal, I really don't know. It's kind of like Paddy Pimblett, where I don't know how good he is, or if his opponent's are just not good. Like I think Leon Edwards is washed. I've never loved him.
Hmm.
He's kind of a decision merchant with one head kick KO, but Bilal is good. He and I can't wait. It's going to be a fun fight. I think we could see JDM knocking out Bilal, or I think we could see Bilal ragdolling JDM, showing there's levels to the game. And then Shevchenko for the co-main, two belts. Whenever the UFC advertises it as like a two belt card, you usually know where that's going. But uh, this is I don't know how to say it. Fiorot is the next. She is the number one contender for sure. She deserves this fight. After seeing Grasso fight like five times against Shevchenko recently. But speaking of Grasso, I mean, she's also right there on the card.
She is
But
on the card as well.
yes, very important. But I think Shevchenko is. I think she's going to win this fight. I think she's very good. I had her both times, her recent wins or recent fights against Grasso. She she's is very good. And then I think Morales versus Burns got rescheduled. Not sure about that. That could be a fact right there. Either way, in the meantime, I'll move on. I was
Um,
shocked by Jose Aldo being booked. While Jamie checks the facts right there, I was shocked that Jose Aldo was booked against Ayman Zahabi. Zahabi's not bad, but like, what are we doing with Aldo? Like, Aldo is a legend, one of the best featherweights of all time. Uh, to be honest, I wanted to see Jan versus Marab, but I wanted to see O'Malley fight Aldo. Not saying that Aldo deserves like a title contending fight, but I think as a retirement fight, you tell O'Malley like prove how good your striking is, take on Aldo. I think that would be a banger fight, a way to go out for Aldo on top, win or lose. He fights a former champ right there. I don't care about Zahabi against Aldo. I just don't. Aldo has so many fights left. He's a WEC guy, one of your last ones left in all of the UFC. So kind of disappointing there itself, but it's a decent card. Joel Alvarez is very good. People are going to see how good his striking is. I believe Armin is the only person that's dominated him in the UFC, but Joel Alvarez does a ton of damage. He's very, very good. And fighting BSD, honestly, I forgot that fight was booked that way, but BSD is just taking hard fight after hard fight. So good for him, but Alvarez is probably the hardest guy he could have taken. And then the only other prospect I would point out is Navajo Sterling. I think it's good. Steady kickboxing guy that could be fun to see. I believe it's his first or second UFC fight on 315.
yeah, like you said, I did forget that that one did get rescheduled. It hasn't been updated online, but they did say that this past weekend. I do still think that Morales is going to run through Gilbert Burns. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not the greatest card overall, like you said. When we get those two title fights, unless it's International Fight Week or it's the Sphere, two title fights usually means it's lesser champions fighting at the same time. Which in this case, um, they're not the most two. I'm very excited to see JDM versus Bilal, but when we're talking about build up wise, they have to build this as a two championship fight because I don't think Bilal can really carry a pay-per-view by himself. And the same for Valentina Shevchenko, considering pretty sure she defended her belt on a fight night at one point. But either her or Grosso, I'm pretty sure her versus Grosso was on a fight night, UFC fight night in Mexico. I know
Was it a Noche fight night?
it, yeah,
That's very important, very big difference
that
there.
that is
But
a very big deal considering that they only do pay-per-views now for UFC Noche, and they just did one in the Sphere, but the year before that they had Shevchenko versus Grasso. But yeah, either way, exciting card. We have an exciting future for the UFC. Hopefully, some of these fights get announced. Like I said, there's a lot at stake. If this is true, if JDM wins and Islam wants to move up, then that opens everything up in the division below. But we are still waiting on announcements for that because that is going to hold a lot of things up. But we do have some great fights coming up. So very excited to watch some of those as well. And thank you guys for the continued support each episode. We like making these. So as long as you guys keep hitting that like, subscribe, comment, that notification bell, then we will see you guys in the next episode. And sorry about the swearing earlier. That wasn't my fault because I didn't do it.
yeah, parental warning, but sorry about that. And then what we also one more thing I wanted to put in. The UFC did sign Aaron Pico.
Hmm.
So that is a very exciting name. He could be very good. We'll see what happens. He's still 28, very young. So
He
who
did
knows
have a
with that? But
fight, but it did get canceled, I believe. He was supposed to
a
fight.
UFC one?
Yes.
Oh, I was not aware of that. But anyway, he's very good coming over from PFL, which is completely collapsing after absorbing Bellator. But you can check out Bannon Crowley at Next Man Up Media. And
I have
you
some
can, yep,
news. I have some
okay, break it.
almost breaking news. It
Break
seems
it.
like Pico's debut is going to be against Mavzar potentially. That's what they are
Ooh.
working on as of right now. So potential
So does that
debut
mean Volk
news.
is fighting the winner of that? Or would that be
It seems it seems like over the weekend Pico's debut would be targeted for May 17th against Mavzar in the Apex. That's just what I'm hearing right
Wow.
now. So very, very soon.
That would be very exciting. Pico is very good. I think he's one of these guys coming over that legit has a chance to be good.
Because
But
I agree. I think mostly due to the fact that he's not 40 years old at this point. So
yeah, that's a huge factor.
it's exciting to see someone come over that is we know is pretty good and also um is not 40 years old. So
Yeah, and he hasn't lost in 5 years besides one injury. So very exciting there. But anyway, check out Banning at Next Man Up Media or MMA. And then, sorry for the swearing, you can cut that out. But we will see you guys
uh,
next time after UFC 315.